You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast, where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, we are talking through something I found actually from a completely separate field, really. I had a client reach out to me and ask me about something that they had recently found out about called brain harmony. And it's a program and a system that is designed to help children with focus issues, ADHD, that kind of thing. Carol Garner Houston is the creator and founder of Brain Harmony. So I want to give credit where credit is due, but I found as I was looking through this material for this client, and she wanted my opinion on whether or not it was worth looking into, I found this really amazing triangular-shaped, pyramid-shaped diagram. And as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is 100% aligned with the child-centered play therapy model. So you know me, my lens of the world is always, how does it connect with child-centered play therapy and its principles and its foundations and its design. So this was so exciting for me because what's really cool to me is when we can make connections outside of the play therapy field, it solidifies the approach, it solidifies the efficacy, fancy word for it, works. And we have this idea now that from a neurobiological piece, because brain harmony is designed from the neurobiological side with the neuroplasticity and that kind of thing. And there is a growing field, this is a related aside, there is a growing field in the play therapy community that is focusing on brain-based play and what happens at a very deep neurobiological level during play. So they are expanding on that and they are researching and studying that. So it's not that play therapy is not interested in that, but that is not at the forefront of what we do practically speaking in the playroom necessarily. And so this is the neurobiological piece that perfectly aligns and perfectly ties with the child-centered play therapy side. So I'm really excited. So we're going to talk through this. So first is the hierarchy. And I use that word a lot. I'll explain what that means specifically in terms of what happens for a child with their own hierarchy. And then obviously prioritization comes next. And then finally, the 4-step model, and I'm going to parallel their 4 steps with our 4 steps, and I'll show you how closely it ties together. So before we get into the actual specifics, I want to make it very clear that children are here and now. Children are emotional beings. They are driven by their feelings in any given moment. And so therefore, they can only attend to 1 or 2 things at a time. So their emotions govern what happens, their decisions, their thoughts, their actions, their behaviors, all of those things are governed by their feelings. And therefore, it's a I-centered, the letter I, like me-centered, I-centered existence driven by what I feel at any given moment. Which is why it's really important as parents and caregivers and people who love kids to be aware that takes place. And that then influences our understanding of the hierarchy and of the prioritization. So I think if we miss that piece, the rest of this falls apart. So I wanted to make that very clear. They only attend to 1 or 2 things at a time because that's all they're capable of attending to. So we will dive into what this pyramid looks like, and I'm really excited to see this connection unfold. The path to calm, confident, and in control parenting starts now. All right, so if you've been with me for any length of time, my veterans, my ones who've been with me for several episodes at least, you probably have heard me reference Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't bring it up often, but it really is a helpful diagram and image to really kind of paint the picture of what goes on for human beings and their growth process. So without getting into all of the theory and the theoretical model behind Maslow, he is known as the kind of developer of this idea that there is a hierarchy, and therefore one can only move to the next step when the previous step has been satisfied. So if you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, it's essentially a pyramid shape, and there are layers in the pyramid. And so obviously at the bottom, it's bigger. And as they get closer toward the top, they are smaller. So think about a pyramid and layers within the pyramid, Egyptian pyramids with the stacks of the clay bricks. So you have to keep in mind that Maslow posited that if you don't know if you're going to eat or drink or have shelter, which is at the bottom of his hierarchy, so basic survival needs. I need a place to have food, water, and shelter. If I don't have those things and/or I'm working on those things because they're not guaranteed, I cannot move on to the next level in the hierarchy because one takes priority over the other. And that makes sense, right? You're not going to worry about friendships when you don't know if you're going to have enough to eat. So for basic survival and for basic development, one will always precede the other. So I use Maslow's hierarchy as an example at the center a lot because it's a very similar process to children. So as we're thinking about one preceding the next, and there being a hierarchy, this happens with children as well. So the thing that is really emotionally draining on them, that is really confusing, that is really overwhelming to them, that is taking most of their thoughts. So let me pause there. What might that be? You just moved across the country and your child is trying to acclimate to all of the new. That would take priority over almost everything. Child is going through a separation or divorce in the family. That would take priority over almost everything. New sibling is born or someone in the family dies. That would take priority over everything. So we have to think about what is the brain going to be emotionally attending to. Remember, they're here and now, emotional beings, feelings govern everything. So what feelings are the most significant, the biggest, the most overwhelming for a child? That is where their attention will go. So therefore, they can't worry about being obedient. They can't worry about their schoolwork. They can't worry about their sibling interaction. If all day, every day, their brain is trying to sort out what happened now that grandma died. Where is she? Am I ever going to see her again? Is she in heaven? Can I talk to her? Can I send her a letter? Whatever's going on emotionally related to a death, for example, it will take precedence over everything. So same principle applies with the brain harmony perspective with the neurobiological piece. So that will give you kind of the visual for the hierarchy as we move forward. So the next piece of this is the prioritization. So you have to keep in mind, what is the thing that we stress more than anything else? For those of you that have been with me for a long time, it all comes back to what? The relationship, yes. So we have relationship mindedness when we interact with kids. Well, there has to be a certain context in which children process their feelings and an environment in which they process their feelings and circumstances in which they process their feelings. So the prioritization, if you're thinking about these levels in the hierarchy, not only does one precede the next, but there's also a priority put on which one is most important. So you have to keep in mind when we're dealing with children and their emotional nature, safety is at the forefront of everything. And it's easy to think, well, yes, they have to feel physically safe, but we miss the mark if we think that's as far as it goes. Because the truth is, they have to feel emotionally safe. They have to feel mentally safe. They have to feel safety at their deepest level. No matter what I feel, it's okay. No matter what I do, it's okay. No matter what I say, it's okay. No matter how many times I fail, it's okay. No matter how many questions I have to ask, it's okay. No matter how many times I completely lose it and I'm completely out of control, it's okay. So there is a safety component where when the child feels safe, then other things follow. And often I get parents who feel that or report that my child is nice and kind to everyone except for me. They're wonderful at school. They're wonderful at church. They're wonderful at swimming. They're wonderful when they play sports. They're wonderful everywhere they go. But as soon as they walk in the door, they are absolutely awful with me. And that's hurtful to a lot of parents because, it's like I do everything for them. I am constantly trying to do my best for them, and I get their absolute worst. Let me reframe that for some of you, because I know some of you are saying, yes, that's me. Or some of you are saying, yes, I've been there. Some of you don't know it, but you will be there soon, okay? So let me reframe so that you have a different perspective. Children treat the person in their life that provides them with the most unconditional love and the most unconditional acceptance the worst, because they know there's safety in that relationship and they won't lose it. Let me say that again. I'll probably rephrase, but you'll get the gist. So people treat the person in their life that provides them with the most unconditional love and the most unconditional acceptance worse than anyone else because they know there is safety and security in that relationship. They will never do anything to lose that relationship. So if you are one of those parents that cries yourself to sleep and you can't wrap your brain around why your child is so awful to you and so good to everyone else, it's because you have made your child feel that you will love them and accept them no matter what, and you are their safe place. So as hard as that is, as challenging as that is, as defeating as that is, as overwhelming as that is, to feel like your child is not good to you and good to everyone else, it's because you've clearly communicated that you love them and accept them no matter what. That is special. That is not to be downplayed. That is not to be ignored. Unconditional love and unconditional acceptance are two of the most important pieces of a healthy relationship. Now, when your child learns to better regulate, when your child learns to better self-control, when your child learns better emotional vocabulary, when you use consistent and purposeful and intentional child-centered play therapy skills that you learn in this podcast and other places, when they do the work and you do the work, will you get to a point where your child can control themselves even around you? Absolutely. This isn't a death sentence here, right? It's not going to go on for the rest of your life. But right now, they hold it together for everyone else because they have to, and they fall apart with you because they know they can. So please don't ever trivialize the fact that your kid knows that you love them unconditionally. That's a huge, huge thing to celebrate, even in the midst of the struggle. So that was a freebie. That had nothing to do with this podcast, but you got a bonus. Okay, so when we're talking about their inability to be kind in certain situations, it's because they don't feel safe. And when you have safety and security and an environment and a relationship that provides those things, that's when change takes place. Because the entire premise of child-centered play therapy is that given the right time, tools, and opportunity in the right environment with the right person. So that's a lot of ifs, right? If we have the time, if we have the tools, if we have the opportunity, if we have the environment, and if we have the right person and the relationship with that person, children know what they struggle with, they know what they need to work on, and they will become the best version of themselves that they can become if those things are all in place. So yes, that's a lot of ifs, and we have to create intentional and purposeful scenarios that provide all of that. But children don't want to stay dysregulated. Children don't want to stay stuck. So if your child is currently dysregulated, if your child is currently out of control with their behavior, if your child is currently struggling with something, they are stuck and they are working to get out of it. You can help by using the 4 pillars, by using the rules of thumb, by using all the things that we've talked about in all of the episodes. If you're new, please go back and listen to archived episodes. We're almost at 100, so there's plenty for you to catch up on. But you have to be able to recognize that your child is acting that way because they're communicating, I don't like how things are going right now. So what does change look like? Because we have to talk about this brain harmony pyramid and then compare it to the child-centered play therapy pyramid. So the pyramid, as Carol Garner Houston decided it looked like, was that comfort is at the bottom, which leads to activation, which leads to learning, which leads toward mastery. So let me say those again. Comfort, activate, learn, master. It's very clever because it spells calm. And so her whole thing is the brain can be calm and effective and whatever. So very clever. So it spells calm. Comfort, activate, learn, master. Okay, so keep in mind, this is the neurobiological side of things, right? So this is very much about the brain. This is very much about the way the brain can focus and attend and pay attention. And, through rehearsal and through practice, kids can learn how to manage their brain. That's why it's called brain harmony. All right, so now let's parallel that with the child-centered play therapy side. This pyramid does not exist. This is my connections being drawn, so you won't find this anywhere. This is just how I've connected these dots. So comfort in hers parallels to relationship in mine. So you can understand the child has to feel comfortable for those things to take place. Well, in our world, the relationship has to exist in order for these things to take place. So what do we talk about all the time? Even in the last episode, relationship is at the key to everything. So relationship has to exist. In the playroom, rapport is important. The relationship between the therapist and the child is important. In your home, the relationship between you and your child is important. That's why we stress it so much. So once relationship is there, they are willing to attempt different things. They're willing to see what having power and control feels like. They're willing to see what being obedient feels like. They're willing to see what giving up power and control feels like. They're willing to switch roles, see what it feels like to be on the other side of a scenario. They're willing to try something and fail. They're willing to try something and succeed. Once the relationship exists, there is safety, there's security, and therefore, I'm willing to try this. We call it dipping the toe in the water. What is it like to obey a limit that is set? For 2 years, all I've ever done is buck a limit and disobey. What does it feel like to actually comply with a limit that's being set in the playroom? Let me dip my toe in the water and see what it's like. Okay, so relationship leads to an attempt. Then it leads to a discovery. So learn in the calm hierarchy, so comfort, activate, learn, master, we have relationship, attempt, discover is learn. So here's what happens. Kids attempt something, and then they discover how they feel about it. They discover what the likely outcome is. They discover what someone's reaction is. So I'm going to see what it's like. And now I've learned something about myself. I've learned something about the other person. I've learned something about the world. I've learned something about relationships. So there's a discovery process that takes place. Discovery is what allows a child to see new possibilities. Because when you discover that your normal is not exclusive and that there are other realities, I don't always have to be defiant. I don't always have to cry when something upsets me. I don't always have to throw things when I get angry. I don't always have to yell in frustration. When you realize there are other options, it's discovery. And discovery is what begets the possibility of change, which leads us to the fourth one. Theirs is master, ours is competence. I have discovered that I'm able to be this new person. I've discovered I'm able to try this new thing. I've discovered that I really like it, how I feel when I'm kind. I like it, what the reaction I get when I am obedient. I like it when I choose a positive outcome instead of a negative outcome. Then they become competent at the new normal. So they're able to say, oh, I want to keep doing this. I really like this. I'm going to put effort and energy into using my new skills and understanding the world in this new way. So let me recap here. So theirs was comfort, activate, learn, master. Play therapy perspective is relationship, attempt, discover, competence. So here's what I think is really important for us to know. Children go through this process with everything. This is not just exclusive to the playroom. Children go through this with everything, whether it is recognized and honored or not. So now you at least know what the process is, but maybe up to this point you had no idea this was taking place in your children. They're still going through these steps, whether anyone was ever aware of it or not. So what's amazing is when you start to recognize the relationship has to be at the start, then they will be willing to attempt things when there's safety and security there. Once they attempt it and they get a sense of what it's like, it leads to discoveries. And then once they see how things go, then they become competent in that. You will see it again and again and again. And this is fascinating to watch because it really is, our fancy word for it is self-actualization. It's becoming a better version of yourself right before our eyes. And this process will continue all throughout life. We do it as well. This isn't just for children. Think about something that you've gone through. I felt safe. I tried something. I had a discovery, and now I've been able to do it well. That's a very consistent part of life. So how amazing. It always makes me so encouraged and kind of fired up when I see the real world outside of the play field where they discover things and promote things that support what we believe, what we know, what we do. It's just termed differently or it's presented differently, but the principles are there. So when you have a child who, for example, is scared of everything, when you have a child who is a perfectionist, when you have a child who's needy, there is a breakdown somewhere in that pyramid. The relationship isn't there, the attempt isn't there, the discovery isn't there, or the competence isn't there. There is a reason why your child does not become a better version of themselves. We are always working toward it. So therefore, if there's something going on that's preventing those 4 stages, the hierarchy, right, the prioritization, if there's something not going, there's a breakdown somewhere. And now you can pinpoint where it is. Okay, well, the relationship is there, the attempt was there, but then there was never a discovery made. So that's when you're able to be aware of what's happening and maybe help facilitate that. So that was really, really exciting. And here's the takeaway. This has huge relational impact for us. Because number one, our children have to feel that they have a relationship that allows them to work on these things first. Do we have that kind of relationship with our kids? I know we want to. Are we actively pursuing and working on that every moment of every day? I need to make sure that the relationship is where it needs to be. Maybe that's the challenge. Maybe you start there this week. Maybe you say, no, you know what? I do have that relationship with my kids. I've worked really hard and I feel that we're at a really good relational point. Celebrate that, be proud of that, be very satisfied in the work that's been done on both sides. But maybe you're realizing my child just isn't willing to attempt anything. The relationship is there, but they're just scared to attempt something. Okay? So then what can you do in the relationship that encourages that? My child is scared to, they'll attempt it, but then as soon as they fail, they're not willing to keep going to discover anything. Okay? What can you do in the relationship to encourage that? This is the relational awareness that gives us the opportunity to make meaningful changes in the future. So that's your challenge. See where your child is on this scale, this hierarchy, and where, if any, there's a breakdown, and then make some purposeful decisions about what you can do to encourage that. So the original Calm, Comfort, Activate, Learn, Master was from Brain Harmony, Carol Garner Houston. I want to give her credit for that. But obviously our relationship, attempt, discover, and competence is the perfect parallel. So I always love it when things like that come across my way, and then I love to share it with you. If you haven't already, please go to playtherapyparenting.com. That's where you can find all of the podcast episodes that have been archived /newsletter. You can sign up there. Please email me if you have thoughts, questions, comments, brenna@thekidcounselor.com. I love hearing from y'all. Thank you for sending me emails and encouraging me and asking me questions. That's my favorite part of this whole family. So I will look forward to talking with you again soon. Thank you for spending some of your week with me. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.